Welcome to Architects for Change, the podcast that bridges the gap between architecture, the built environment and politics. I'm Jay Morton, your host. I'm an architect and political geek, and together we'll hear from the change makers and thought leaders who are shaping the future of our cities and spaces. Our conversations will tackle pressing questions that hold the key to our future. How can we achieve a net zero future? What does it truly take to design a better world? And most importantly, how can politics play a pivotal role in breaking down the barriers that hinder progress? Okay, welcome to Architects for Change. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Nick Searl, who is originally an architect, but has actually been at the heart of one of the UK's most ambitious regeneration projects, which is King's Cross in London, with related Argent. For over 2 decades, he helped shape King's Cross into a global success story that we know today, and then went on to lead Brent Cross. And his career has spanned commercial strategy, phasing, placemaking and social value at a scale very few get to work at. So having recently stepped away from Argent, this is a moment to look back at the key lessons from those projects, and is also an opportunity to look ahead at what the next generation of new towns and major master plans will need to get right. So I think it's going to be a real honour to have your expertise, because I think there's a lot we can learn from you. So welcome.
Thank you.
So
Great to be.
maybe let's just start with just a very quick rundown about you and your journey to get to working on King's Cross.
Yeah, I as you said, originally qualified as an architect here in London. Made the mistake of qualifying in 1989, and within about 18 months was in the middle of the biggest recession since the war.
Being 2008, I can relate.
No, this I'm talking about 1990, 89, 90.
Yeah.
And there was 45% unemployment in UK architects at that time. Mm-hmm. So my solution to that was to move to Bangkok, and I spent almost 5 years working as an architect, then as a kind of manager, working with the development business. Mm-hmm. Worked directly with the president of a big development company out there, which was absolutely fascinating. Did absolutely terrible large-scale regeneration projects. I learned exactly how not to go about these things.
Okay.
When I came back, I was faced with, do I go back to being an architect or do I continue down the route? And I actually joined Bureau 4 as a project manager. And one of my major clients was Chelsfield at the time, run by Elliot Bernard. And after a couple of years at Bureau 4, I got a call from Chelsfield and I joined them. So in 2000, I went across and actually started to work directly within development businesses. And I worked for 7 years on Paddington Basin, which was really interesting. I saw some really good things and I saw some less good things. So there was a lot of, when I look back now, I'm not sure I was so conscious at the time of what I was experiencing, but I look back now and I realise what was happening and what wasn't working so well. And in 2007, I joined Argent, which was the most liberating moment of my entire career, because suddenly I was surrounded by people who really cared about what was happening and had an incredibly transparent way of operating, which really suited me and what I wanted to do. And I think it was only when I got there that I started to figure out who I was and what I actually wanted to do. Yeah. It took me, I realised now that I needed that environment. So I was there for 17 years. I kind of did 10 years on King's Cross, 10 years on Brent Cross, and they overlapped. And then I was incredibly fortunate to become managing partner for the last 4 years I was there. Yeah. Which was a whole nother experience, actually leading a business in that kind of environment. And then, as I say, I stepped away at the end of last year, and some new things are now happening, which I'm sure we'll get to talk about.
That's exciting. Well, looking at King's Cross, so it was nominated for a Sterling Prize, and I remember when I moved to London, I was at Bartlett School of Architecture and I lived in Tufnell Park, and getting the bus and seeing this swathe of land change over that time. It definitely felt like a master plan that did things a little bit differently than maybe other developers might have done. So what do you think were the pivotal moves that really made it a success?
So I can talk about these things from the perspective that I wasn't actually there in the early years of planning when really important foundational decisions and activities were undertaken. The first thing is that the normal thing that happens when you get a large piece of land and a developer involved is everybody immediately starts drawing little squares and moving them about and trying to figure out how many of them you can get on there and how tall they can be and calculating how many square feet and just trying to maximize. I won't even call it density, because if I call it density, then it sounds like there's actually an urban thought going on. Actually, they're just trying to maximize the value of the piece of land by seeing how much stuff you can get on it. You know, how big is the envelope and how far can I push it? Because whatever I do, someone's going to pull me back. So let's go out here. And it's that kind of attitude is the attitude I'd previously experienced. And Argent didn't do that.
Right.
So they spent about a year in dialogue with, firstly, the local council, and secondly, with English Heritage, as it then was. The product of that dialogue was the document that a lot of people now know called Principles for a Human City, which still sits on the King's Cross website, it's still available. And that it's basically a shared ambition.
Yeah.
It's a document that doesn't try to define what you're going to do. It's just saying at the top level, what is it that we share in terms of our values, objectives, you know, ideals about what we want this thing to deliver. And that did a number of things. Firstly, it built trust.
Yeah.
It built trust because if the first thing you do with those organizations as a developer, the first thing you do is draw something, which, as I said, is trying to max things out, and you present that in a drawn form, of course, there is going to be an instinctive and emotional response. It's kind of, I like it, I don't like it. It's quite binary. It's not kind of like, yeah, well, there's something we can work with.
You're trying to max out our place.
Yeah.
And where's the benefit
absolutely,
for us?
and where's the benefit for us? Okay, and you know, there's, you know, the very fact that we use the terminology to win planning permission, by definition, if one person wins, somebody else loses. There's a combative language. So if you walk in on day one with a drawn thing and you start going, well, we want to do that, you have now set up a confrontational set of relationships, almost inevitably. And I would say that's how the majority of planning applications go. And of course, you know, when it's one building, you don't spend a year having a dialogue. But the bigger you get, the more important that is. So you create trust, you create shared ambition. And by shared ambition, what I mean is you identify the areas where you agree, where you have something in common, and you focus on those and you write them down. And when you've written those down, boy, that makes the areas that you disagree on much easier to deal with. Because you've now got a point of reference about.
We can agree on a certain percentage and maybe then we can let some other things go.
But you've built something now, you've built a commonality. And that's really, really important. And you've also then created basically the first stage of the brief. Because from that point on, everything you subsequently do, you're going back and you're looking at that document saying, does it stand up to scrutiny against Principles for a Human City? And that goes on for years and years and years. That, you know, so it went on through the immediate planning process, obviously, as that document then evolved into a series of other documents that became increasingly more detailed about what the proposals were. So that initial process was absolutely key to how it worked. The second thing, and I suppose in a world where I had to say what is the most important thing, is the way that the planning permission, the outline planning permission was structured. So the thing with a project that's going to take 15 to 20 years to deliver, the only certainty you have is everything contextually is going to change. So societal context is going to change, environmental context is going to change, technological context is going to
that's really
change.
quite-
Economic, you're going to go through economic cycles. So everything's going to change. Can you imagine when the guys were sitting in 2003, putting the planning application together, trying to second guess what would be necessary in 2023?
Yeah, where were we all in 2003? Yeah.
So try and picture it. It's that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you read Principles from a Human City, there are 10 principles. None of them mention environmental sustainability or climate change. It's not even mentioned. So that's, this is a really, really forward-thinking, progressive developer who at that time, it wasn't part of the dialogue.
It wasn't.
I mean, there were things that went on about how do you create your own energy within the system, but it wasn't one of those first 10 fundamental principles, which it would be really weird now. I mean it might not be in there now just because it's so obvious you don't even have to write it down. That might be the argument now, and we've gone through that process. But it was so the planning permission itself recognised change. What a council usually wants is to know exactly what it's going to get. And what they came up with was a planning permission which had, I think it was about 30 parameter plans. And the parameter plans basically set out the rules of engagement for the master plan. It set out the major streets and squares. It set out heights of of areas. It set out various zones, each which had a primary use, each of which had a maximum area. The whole thing had a total area. And if you added up all the individual areas, it added up to more than the total. So there was this water bedding that you had to do. But within each zone,
allowed flexibility.
It allowed flexibility of exactly how much went in each zone. It allows some flexibility of which uses within the zones. There were streets and things, but they were all able to move. The main ones couldn't, but you could move the ones within the individual zones. And what it also was, so what it allowed for was the fact that you've got this, as it's turned out to be 17 years of planning applications, individual planning applications going back within the context of the outline, going back with sort of 80 to 90 individual planning applications, reserve matters. And of course, every application is now being delivered in the context of what's gone before and in the context of this.
A rebuilding every time.
Every time you make a planning application, the context for the next one is different. So it's always different. And the societal situation is changing around you as well. So the needs and demands are different. So when we built the first office buildings, for instance, in the south, there was all this argy-bargy over car parking. Everybody wanted car parking. We built huge, great big space, basement. And
there's actually a lot more basement car parking than you realise in King's Cross, isn't there?
Only in that southern area. But even there's not much car parking. The main purpose of that basement at the end there is to get all of the ground floor servicing underground, so you don't have beeping lorries and all the rest of it. There's no service yards at grade,
an active ground floor as well.
And you can have an active ground floor. So that was the whole point. But everybody wanted car parking. There was a lot of that. Roll forward 10 years into the northern part of the site, 400,000 square feet, which was ultimately taken by Meta. There are 4 car parking spaces, all of them accessible. And that was it. There is no more.
I mean, also thinking about changing, you wouldn't have even anticipated a Meta existing.
So when did Meta came into being in 2003 or 4? February 2004, I think it was.
Facebook. I think
so Facebook, was invented in Mark Zuckerberg's garage. I think it was
around about
February 2004. So when you started King's Cross, Facebook didn't exist.
And that shows the change.
So the change.
Yeah.
So if you take a large-scale urban regeneration project like this, and you try to fix it, you're basically dialing in failure.
So what, I suppose in terms of commercial, in 2003, what would you have been imagining would have been like banks or finance or insurance? Or...
I mean, again, you are...
No idea.
You don't really know.
Yeah.
And of course, the presence of the university, which we didn't know that was going to happen until it happened, started to create an identity.
Yeah.
And the presence of the university ended up being incredibly important, not because all the businesses that came were businesses that were going to employ people from Central St Martin's. Far from it. What the university brought was a permanent, youthful creativity.
Yeah.
Because
it brought the beautiful people.
It brought interesting, beautiful, creative people.
Yeah.
And they stayed that way permanently because they join when they're 18. When they're 21, they get thrown out and another 18-year-old joins.
Yeah.
So it is permanently in that state of youthfulness and creativity.
Yeah.
And it immediately created a vibe for the place. And funnily enough, it doesn't matter what business you're in, you are employing young people who want to be in a young, creative, vibey kind of place.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes it easier to attract people to your business.
Bringing St Martin's in wasn't part of the plan.
No.
But it did definitely feel that, I mean, I sort of mentioned this here, that it almost felt like you did some of the fun stuff first. So the sort of meanwhile use, rather than just building the housing and the offices first, there was a sort of about creating an element of place. Was that planned, or did that sort of, again, also happen organically?
So I'm going to... I absolutely understand why you call it the fun stuff. And it kind of is.
Yeah.
It's really serious stuff.
Yes.
It is really, really serious stuff. So there's a number of things about this which are...
Or maybe the better term for it is the engaging stuff. It's the way that engages the wider community.
It is. And it is. But it is... So I'm going to literally put my developer hat on and explain the rationality of why this makes sense. Because the normal way of doing things, particularly if you're in a building, a development of 3 or 4 buildings, is you build the buildings, you get some income from those buildings as early as you can, particularly if it's resident, you do forward sales, you get some of that money coming in.
Sell them quite quickly.
And then you come in and you build the public space and you fill the residential, the retail spaces right at the last minute. And we all know the residential developments that haven't actually done what they said they were going to do. Actually, the square wasn't really very nice and they never put any retail in.
Yeah.
And they kind of sit there empty.
Yeah.
So when you've got something very large like this, and by definition, when you're doing regen, your first and biggest job is to change perceptions of the area where you're. Most of these areas, people don't imagine themselves living or working there.
Yeah.
And
I think we've got to remember what King's Cross was in 2003. I think we've gone from King's Cross being like a lot of train station areas in cities. Yeah. Which was even though central, not the most pleasant of places.
No, dark, dirty, dangerous.
Yeah.
They were it was a very, very difficult area. It was largely inaccessible.
Yeah,
it was largely inaccessible. Again, it off.
The 390 bus route was just nothing for like 10 minutes before you hit Camden.
Yeah, you kind of peered over this, and there was various nefarious activities taking place on the other side of hoardings.
And the big queue outside the Egg.
Yeah, it's just that was 2007. It was still like that in 2007 when I joined. I could not believe. I didn't know the area very well. I remember walking around it and just thinking, I cannot believe this is still here like this.
Yeah.
To be done in 2007.
Yeah.
So you've got an area like that, and changing perceptions is really important. It's not just King's Cross, it's the majority of these large areas either have a poor identity or no identity.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you're coming in, you've got to start that process. Now you've got a choice. You can either just build some buildings and then try and say, look, there's some new buildings here. You should think about this differently now because there's new buildings here. And we've put a square and a shop. Or you say, no, what we're going to do is we are going to start that process before we even build the buildings.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of things that you can do to do that. And I would say, looking back on it, we did the whole range of things. So things like we took the old petrol station, we turned it into a little restaurant. In fact, a very cool restaurant.
That was the Carmody Gawk building that was there.
Yep. And that became... Within a month of opening, you were on a 3-month waiting list to get in.
Yeah.
And it was a well-run restaurant. but its actual attraction was just like, it was so odd in the middle of nowhere. It's like people just wanted to come. It's like, this is so, it was in Time Out in New York 4 months after we opened it. It was being promoted, and it was like, wow, it's like, it just had something.
It created a buzz.
So we did that. Then we started to do street food, and of course street food is now everywhere you go. It wasn't really a thing in 2011. So we brought in, it's now called Curb, but it had I've forgotten what it was called before it was called Curb. It had a different name, and it was very small. It was a lady who ran it, and she had like 5 carts and was bringing people in and doing stuff. And we started doing that. And we realized that, there were 80 different nationalities living within a 1 mile radius of King's Cross. And, one of the things they all had in common was food. And they all enjoyed sharing their food and getting other people to try their food. And
everyone together.
Food brought, and so people would start coming into this, derelict bit of land where we just created a space and started to do that. The other thing that you do, and these things are happening at the same time, it's not an ordered thing, a sequential thing, is you look at which pieces of public realm can you deliver ahead of the actual need.
Yes.
Okay, which everybody is alarmed by, because that's immediately, when you look at your cash flows and everything,
you want to spend some money
you
first.
want to back end that normally. And what we're doing is we're pulling it forward. Not only are we pulling it forward in terms of constructing it, but once you've constructed it, you've got to manage it, which costs, and you've got to activate it. So you've got to look after it. It's got to feel good. It's got to be high quality. There's got to be, when you come in, you kind of go, wow, this is cool. This is interesting. And when you come back again, there's something new going on, because if the same thing, you kind of like get bored.
Yeah.
So you've got to be really active in what you do with that space if you want to have the effect which you're trying to have, which is to change perceptions. So how do you do that? Firstly, you've got to look at what is it you're going to have to do anyway to be able to deliver buildings, and really focus on that bit, because that bit, all you're doing really is just bringing an expense forward by, maybe a year or two.
I mean, I suppose the assumption is that it means that the values of what you can get with what you actually do build in the end is going to be higher. But how can you like prove that to yourself in a way if you're trying to fund something?
Well, you can't.
So you just got to hope.
You can't prove, but what you can say, I think there is plenty of evidence to show that if you can create a high quality experience, even before people are living in a place, and you can create a reason for people to want to be there, you are creating the grounds for a successful development around that place. Because people move to a place, not to a building.
Yes, this is true. Yeah.
Okay. So this is all back to the identity, the change perception. What is this place that I would go to? And of course, in the early days, if you said I'll live or work in King's Cross, people just kind of looked at you like you had 3 heads. It's like, no, I won't.
Yeah.
Was the simple answer. So a huge amount of work went into that early delivery and activation. Granary Square has been open since 2012 with fountains going, with no buildings.
Yeah.
It opened just about the same time as the university.
And the other key thing about Granary Square is a public space where you can enjoy without having to spend any money if you don't want to. The community, so it does bring other people from the surrounding area, which is quite important as well, I think.
It does. And, a couple of things, we would do surveys. And the best and one of the most consistent answers we were given when we would go out in the summer and say, why are you here? They say, because I just like hanging out here.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the best answer.
Yeah.
It's nice if people say, I came because I want to go to that restaurant or to that shop or to that. But when people came here just to sit, that's great.
And play in the fountain.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And we got we got a particularly lovely letter that I remember, but we got quite a lot of correspondence from local residents who lived in social housing nearby, and they didn't have any public space that they could use really safely. They certainly couldn't let their children go on their own.
It's just quite nasty roads on there as well.
Very poor quality public space around the social housing on the other side of York Way, and suddenly they had a place where they were invited to come, and
so it brought all different layers of the community all together.
Big mix of different people.
So you were saying other developers did it the other way around. Was there an example that did it the same way as King's Cross did before, or would you say that Argent was one of the sorts of leaders in that? Or was there sort of examples?
I mean, it's sometimes quite difficult to compare because not many large regen projects are a single ownership projects. They're areas, so like Paddington, I worked on Paddington. Paddington actually had multiple owners who owned the different bits. And even though there was kind of, a board where we all came together, everybody was on their own track really, and everybody had their own different timescales.
And agenda.
Profit.
Yeah. Expectations,
agendas, all that stuff. So it was very difficult to create a holistic sense of that place, and so I'm trying to think where. I mean, you've had other situations. The Olympics, the Olympic site. That was one thing, but of course it was driven by different priorities.
Yeah.
It kind of had to open on whatever it was, 2012. The date. So it was driven by a different set of priorities, and that was one where they kind of cut the ribbon and opened the whole thing in one go. What King's Cross did was opened incrementally.
Little ribbons.
Little tiny ribbons. There must be 1,000 ribbons that would have been cut if we'd actually cut them.
Yeah.
And you didn't really notice. I mean,
but every time you went there was something new.
That's the point.
That was actually, and I definitely sense that. I mean, it's such a mammoth project. I would say, what would you say the sort of biggest barriers to maybe get another project like that off the ground? Obviously, we've got the agenda for a lot of new towns and big major regen schemes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you feel. It feels like the industry is quite stuck at the moment, and there is a lot of stalling. What would you say are the key barriers, and how could you get over them?
So, the biggest single barrier to more King's Crosses, which is what the last government said they wanted to achieve, which I think was a really odd thing to say, because these situations are so local. It's kind of foolish to start pretending you can pick up something and translate it and replicate it in any way somewhere else. I mean, I knew what they were trying to do, but it felt weird. I think the biggest barrier, quite simply, is that, again, almost by definition, the places where large-scale regeneration can happen require massive upgrade in their infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the costs of actually doing, just the viability of costs of projects, which are risky projects, even before you look at that infrastructure cost, are tight. Okay, because we know that financing costs have gone up. We know that construction costs have gone up. We know that trying to comply with all the different regulations are now particularly difficult. There's various barriers to foreign investment in terms of just taxation. There are lots of challenges.
Because a lot of people are mentioning that or highlighting that.
The
barriers to international investment.
Yeah, I mean,
it does feel like a lot of clients that we're trying to work with are struggling to try and get investment.
Well, I can come to that because that's the field I'm now working in.
Yeah.
That's the field I'm now working in. And there is no doubt that the UK on one level is very attractive because it's a very sophisticated market.
Yeah.
But when people get in there, they start getting tied up in all of these processes, all of these regulations, all of these, tight margin challenges. And while, I heard a major international investor on stage just 2 weeks ago, and they said, look, where we can see complexity that we can influence, we're quite comfortable with that. But where we see complexity and barriers that we can't influence the outcome, we're very uncomfortable with that. And we frankly won't invest in those situations. And I think at the moment, a lot of overseas investment doesn't see how it can influence outcomes.
Right. So therefore,
and they're not going to throw large sums of money into situations where they don't have any influence. They don't can genuinely can't explain to an investment committee how that particular risk is going to be overcome.
Yeah. So
And
that's
that's
a big barrier.
that's a big barrier. And that's, some of the challenges that we've had around the Health and Safety Act.
Yeah.
It's that some of the challenges we have around planning and policy are just, there's layers of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite, actually, we'll come back to that. But so I think the biggest single barrier at the moment is the infrastructure cost required to actually get to the point where you can actually deliver these things.
Yeah. So whether that be, when you say infrastructure, it's transport, it's moving whatever needs to be moved in a brownfield site.
It's literally, it's transport,
water.
it is all of the utilities, it's data.
Yeah.
It's just all of everything you need to create a place which is serviced to the point where you can build a building and you can plug it into everything it needs to be a functioning place.
Yeah.
And, quite often, in addition to that, there might be cleanup required because, again, the nature of the places where you're doing this may have had previous industrial uses, varies from place to place. There's all sorts of layers of just preparatory work, highways works, just that may not even be on your site to link it in. And not what the normal process is. If you want to come along and build this, then you're going to have to contribute to the changes we're going to have to make to the highway junctions in all these different places to enable that to happen.
Which I suppose is fair enough. But I guess
it is, except that the reality is that if that puts the whole project underwater, it just never happens.
Yeah.
It just never happens.
Yeah.
So this is not about the private sector saying, "Oh, you've got to do everything for me so I can, make huge profits." But it is a very risky business.
Yeah, I think there isn't the understanding in the wider society of actually the margins in terms of development compared to maybe other industries as well. Like they are quite tight. So any sort of risk, delay, extra cost actually sort of almost wipes it out, and these things take such a long time. As you said, King's Cross was.
I mean, it's 25 years since
25
the
years
planning process began. Yeah,
and you need that. I suppose in a way with King's Cross there has been that consistency that the project has continued to happen, whereas a lot of other large master plans have stalled for vet because of unexpected costs, and there hasn't been that sort of consistency to keep going.
They stall. I mean, King's Cross had stalled twice previously. Most of them stall because in their early years they hit an economic downturn.
Yeah.
And that stops them before they've even got going. And King's Cross was very nearly that.
So we never didn't get it.
I mean, the 2008 came along as we got planning permission. We're about to start.
Yeah, true.
The business plan had to be rewritten in 6 months.
Yeah.
All the debt that had been promised was gone. So if the university hadn't signed in November 2008, which is a miracle in itself, given that's 2 months after the crash, they signed because they'd managed to sell it. If that hadn't happened, I'm pretty confident the locks would have gone back on King's Cross and none of this would have happened.
Wow. I mean, that's
it's literally,
that kind of,
it's, I mean, who knows what would have happened?
Yeah.
Maybe somebody else would have come along 3 years later and a different kind of use would have been there and this would have happened differently and we'd be 3 or 4 years away from the end now.
Yeah.
So that's what might have happened.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, that kind of sort of highlights how precarious all these projects actually are. And, particularly, I mean, maybe it is worth, moving on to talking about the sort of national policy, because obviously there are all these ambitious for these schemes. And if we are actually going to get them off the ground, I mean, if you were sitting opposite a minister now, what would you say is essential to make sure they happen and get them right?
I mean, if they can create, so I mean, there's different levels of that.
Yeah.
So firstly is create the conditions for investors to want to put their money into this. Okay, so that just means just clearing a path to them being able to understand how their money is going to be invested, where the challenges are, and how those things can and will be addressed as part of the process. So you've got to clear the fog in those terms. I think there has got to be some public investment that comes along alongside that money.
Which I guess then drives confidence.
Because a massive part of these projects happening is the political will for them to happen.
Yeah.
And that has to be cross-party political will. And the two projects that I've been lucky enough to work on at Brent Cross and King's Cross, both have experienced changes in local and national administration. And both of them have ridden straight across it because the legwork has been done to create cross-party understanding. Some people would say, well, they're just too big to fail. And there is an element of that because once you've got something that big, it's like, who's going to be the person that now pulls the plug on that?
Unless you get a crazy populist.
which can happen.
Yeah.
So actually creating political will is really important. And one of the great ways of creating political will is for that local authority to have actually got some financial skin in the game.
Yeah.
They've actually put something in it to now that didn't really happen at Camden, but that political will was built through the process I described earlier. Whereas, at Brent Cross, it's actually the master developer is a 50-50 joint venture between Barnet Council and Related Argent.
So it's their interest to help keep that moving, keep it going.
They stayed in it for really good reasons.
Yeah.
They stayed in it because they would have more influence over it than just being a planning authority. They're actually sitting on the board of the master developer. And secondly, they took the view that it would be more financially beneficial to their borough to stay in long term and benefit from the maturity and the growth of that area than to just sell the land and go.
Yeah.
And while that second one will have ups and downs, ultimately I think they will be proven right.
So they actually have like a financial asset to show for it as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So with the Brent Cross situation, basically the joint venture puts in all of the infrastructure, puts in all of the utilities and everything else to create service plots. The developer Related Argent then buys those plots, and the money that they pay for that goes back into the master developer, and the majority of it goes back to the council to pay for the land. And of course, what is happening over the 15-year period is the value of that land is going up. That's the theory.
Yeah.
Because the place is maturing, values are growing, so the land is becoming more and more valuable.
Yeah.
So whereas they only got this much for their land on day one, now they get this much for the land on day, 2028. That's the theory. But of course, within that, the market is also doing this. So it's not a lovely straight line, which is painful for the council. But I do believe ultimately they will go through this and they will end up in a better place. Even when you discount the cash flow, they'll still be.
I mean, and I guess also in terms of sort of political will, local residents, like feeling like they are actually, their authority, their place is actually going to benefit from that, rather than it being a developer doing something to them as well. It's
100%.
sort of more of a collaboration.
Yeah, that's a really important part of it, is to bring, and it varies so much on where you are and what you're doing. When we got to Brent Cross and went out into the local people and said, here we are, they literally rolled their eyes and said,
been here before.
We've been talking about this for 20 years now.
And I think that's the other thing with regeneration projects, that you can easily lose local people if they've been told it's going to happen and it keeps stalling and things don't happen.
Yeah.
So back to what you would say to a minister. So
there is
create the
look at how you unlock that, to bring investment into it.
Yeah.
And create partnerships in that between public and private sector. My second, this is my experience of King's Cross. It's part of what my role is now with my new job.
Oh yeah, we'll get on to that one.
But it's also, I guess, training as an architect and all that kind of stuff. There is a real habit of just talking about these places in terms of numbers.
Yes.
And numbers of homes.
Yeah.
And that's all that anybody seems to be interested in.
Because 1.5 million,
It's like you can have 1.5 million terrible homes,
Yeah.
or you can have 1.5 million brilliant
Yeah.
places to live.
Yeah.
You know, and all that stuff. And
form communities and enjoyment and joyful places
so,
and healthy places.
I would say to him, when you're doing this, and when you put people in charge of this process, make it a fundamental part of their remit to deliver great places for people to want to live, not just purely a measurement against the number of homes they delivered. Because, I mean, we did it post-war, didn't we? We built loads of houses, and majority weren't great.
And we moved people out of the cities where they had a lot of other things. And
so I mean, they're thinking about where this happens, you know, and that's really good. But really, really focusing on how do you lay out what I would call the ground floor experience of this, because that's what, if you want to create communities, you need people to come out of their homes. You need them to come together in places that they want to be. What does that look like? What is it? And it will look different in different places. It's not about replicating King's Cross everywhere, because that doesn't make any sense. In Wigan or, you know, or Leeds or, you know, wherever, you know, Bristol, it's like, it's a different set of answers. This is incredibly local. But there are some fundamental principles about it, you know, creating places which you know, are not, you know, that they don't require a car in order to be enjoyable places.
Out and about.
And being able to move.
Cycling.
I mean, you know, if you want to create a low carbon places, you know, everybody, you know, historically looked at operational carbon as the measure. And now we've sensibly started looking at embedded carbon within the buildings themselves. And then there is the third part of that, you know, Venn diagram, which is human behaviours. How do you create and enable low carbon lifestyles within that?
I think that's forgotten a lot of the time. How do you give residents the means to live sustainably?
Yeah,
you know, like
make it easy
to not have to use their car.
It's like rather than people having to feel like they've got to give something up to do something good. Actually, just make the process of doing good. You know, it's like, it shouldn't be a binary choice between, you know, living a sort of a low carbon life and living a kind of enjoyable, easy life. They should, in an ideal world, be the same thing. And actually, I remember talking to my mum when we started Brent Cross, and I was talking to her about the 15-minute city concept. I said, we're designing this place, there's this thing called a 15-minute city, and she said, well, you know, what do you mean? And I said, well, it's a place where, you know, you don't really need a car to get about. You can live in this building, you can take your kids there. On the way back, you can call into the doctors, you can do some shopping, you can go and meet your friends for a cup of coffee, and you walk home and you can go back and pick up your kids. It's like, and it all happens there. And she looked at me and she was like, you mean like the place where I grew up when you were a kid?
Yeah, because that's what it used to be. I mean, even walking around London, you realise that we actually had 2-minute cities. Because, you know, there were a lot of shops, there were a lot of like mini high streets, not just the major high streets.
I mean, I was born in the mid-60s. And so we, as a family, I don't remember us having a car until well into the early to mid-70s. And so my dad would go to work, and then there was me and my brother, and she'd have to get us to school, go shopping. Me, her friends, there weren't any coffee shops, so she didn't go for coffee. But do all that stuff, and she had to do it all without a car. So everything had to be done that way.
Well,
there was buses.
Villages had like 2 or 3 shops.
I grew up in a village in Sussex, and we had all the shops there. We had lorries that used to come to us. A little village called Balcombe, on the way to Brighton. So in a way, we're kind of reinventing human history up until 1965. You know, it's like, this actually isn't that new. But that non-reliance on the car, of course, we're still going to need the car to do various things and the rest of it. But so I would be saying those two things. I would be saying, unlock the route to investment, and I would say, make sure the people in charge have a remit beyond just walking in saying, I succeeded because I delivered X number of houses.
I always
That's not the only measure of success.
I always go back to the Billy Connolly quote. they moved us out of the slums, they gave us plumbing, but we had F all else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
places are. So you've mentioned that. So looking forward, you've mentioned obviously you've stepped away from Argent. What is Nick Searl doing now?
So I genuinely wanted to take a year away and just sort of go and think about this for a while. As I left, I was exhausted, honestly. I mean, it's an exhausting thing. I was quite exhausted, and I was ready to have a bit of a break. But I knew I wanted to carry on doing something in some way. I'd learned a lot, I'd experienced a lot, and I didn't want that to just kind of disappear down a hole. And somebody did use the R word with me at one point, and I didn't react well. Let's put it that way. It was a family member, and they got both barrels. So retirement was never
the rumor that Nick Searl had to.
It was like I just kind of like I feel I wasn't ready for that at all. And I'd been chatting with a chap called Jesse Shappins, who used to run Sidewalk Labs for Google, actually, over in the US. Really fascinating guy. And he now works in Copenhagen for an organisation called Urban Partners. And they're a real estate investment company, a very, very purposeful and thoughtful group. It's only a 20-year-old business, but it's a 23 billion euro business now, employs 650 people. And they have investments mainly across the Nordics and Northern Europe. And they are looking at how part of their investment in the future can be in large-scale urban development.
Okay, yeah.
And that's still an idea that is evolving. And I've been asked to join. I'm not full-time, but I work most of my week with them. And looking at all of the issues that we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
How do we channel investment into large-scale urban regeneration? I mean, their starting point is there's a massive urbanisation going on across the world. I think 42 million people live in cities in Europe today. It's forecast to be 50 million by 50-50.
68% of the global population are going to live in urban environments by 2050.
I think it's even more than that, actually. I think it's more than that.
Yeah.
So there is a massive urbanisation that's going on. And back to the point we were talking about, it's like, how do you do that well?
Yeah, because cities, like urban and high dense living can be good in terms of having.
I mean, we've all seen how it's done badly.
And
just go to the edge of the city, build rows and rows and rows of big towers. And you basically just have to keep getting the bus or the train or drive the car back into the city centre.
Yeah, and then sort of void of community, void of joy.
There's no amenity. There's no real thought about green space as part of that. There's no reason to go out your house apart from to get your journey back into the city centre and back out again. So we know what bad looks like, but what would good look like? Yeah. So we're looking at successful schemes across the globe. We're looking at where there are opportunities, where land is in single ownership, large tracts of land in single ownership in major cities. At the moment, we're focused across that northern swathe of Europe.
Are you looking in the UK as well, or mainly?
I mean, we're whether we end up investing in the UK or not is still to be decided.
The UK needs to sort itself out.
But there are. I said earlier, the UK is a very interesting market from their perspective because it's very sophisticated. It does it very well. But it's also very complex because it's so sophisticated. It's also a very competitive market. There's a lot of people out there doing things. I mean, once you get beyond a certain scale of development, there's only a handful of players that will and can really do it. But even there, that's probably more competitive than most of the rest of Europe, where it's really interesting. I had a conversation with a German developer the other day, and I said, I think the term placemaking has now become overused and is getting, it's getting used inappropriately to explain what goes on. And he said, not in Germany. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it's not even a thing. Nobody even talks that language. There is nothing about.
They're not talking it, but they are doing it, or they're not doing it and
they're not doing it. They're not talking it. It's not a thing.
Wow. Okay.
So I was really, really surprised by that. So, we all see German cities and some of them beautiful and amazing and the rest of it. So it's not that there aren't great places in Germany. There is.
Yeah.
They're just talking about, in terms of the discussion around developments in city centres, is a fairly practical one around the delivery of the necessary. It's functional. Rather than thinking, the kind of language. So to me, that's a massive opportunity straight away to go in and start having those conversations with cities and developers and
even lessons learned.
And just potentially bringing in investment to unlock some of that. Because I believe that process I described earlier, investing early into processes, actually ends up creating more value.
Yeah, definitely.
Firstly, you bring the growth of value forward, so it starts happening earlier because you create the place earlier. And secondly, if you do it well, the ultimate value that you create is greater as well. Now, when I say that, I'm doing that because I'm talking about a financial equation of value. But underpinning that financial growth is societal value. There is real value in that. The downside, of course, is when you do it really well, in cities like London in particular, we're seeing the massive growth in rental values, in housing costs, and the rest of it, which is driving a load of people out.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
how do you balance that?
Well, I mean, I think there is, we've got to focus on, and this is where it's a public-private initiative that's got to work hand in glove here. It's clearly, if you build more homes, then that starts to rebalance the supply demand. But just building lots of homes that lots of international investors can pay high dollar for, it doesn't answer it. So within that, you've got to say, actually, no, we need to deliver enough homes that people can actually afford. So I'm a huge proponent of delivering affordable housing, and King's Cross delivered 40% affordable housing within it. Odd to spot, but that's how much. And the reason it's very rarely talked about is because it was all done in the first few years. It was built most of the affordable housing there was built, 2 whole great big buildings were the first buildings built in the site, and they've been there now for 13 years. Very successful, operating very successfully. So, that was back in the day when there were grants available to housing associations to be able to do that. That's much tougher now. So but this is where, there's a conversation that's going on about we have to treat particularly affordable housing as infrastructure.
I'm a strong believer in that.
It's
definitely.
and you have to look at it, across the political cycles.
UK asset.
Yeah, it can't be at the whim of 4 to 5 year political cycles.
And it saves governments money
Yeah.
in the end, and local authorities money. Actually, the other kind of interjecting a bit thing that I find quite interesting about King's Cross that I think we don't do enough is you've got the school with housing above it.
Yeah.
And it's what an amazing, efficient use of land. I don't think we do that. We've done that anywhere else.
No.
In the UK. I mean, you do get it in Europe.
Yeah.
In some
Get
cases.
it quite a lot in Europe.
And I do remember I was doing reviewing some awards, and there was a school, beautiful school, new build, but it was 2 stories across a huge swathe of land in Zone 2. And I just thought, this is madness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was with the local authority. Why not build?
Well, this all
housing above
this all comes back to the viability. You've got a piece of land now, and if somebody's saying you just have to build a school there, it's 2 stories, and that land could accommodate, a 10-story building and 300 homes.
I mean, that school's really beautiful. It's really successful.
Yep.
They do have decent play space and interesting spaces to play in.
And they come out a lot and play in the
gas holder number 8, designed by Bell Phillips Architects.
They do come out and play in gas holder number 8, as designed by Bell Phillips.
Yeah.
So they come out and they play in there, but so you can do that.
Yeah.
And bringing schools like that into those areas has a magical impact.
Yeah.
Because it changes completely the nature of how you feel when you hear and see a load of children walking through every day.
It is a place where
It becomes
real life people live and play.
People talk about, we talked about a human city.
Yeah.
It makes it feel humane.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and it changes business people back into humans.
Yeah.
Because they're smiling. Everybody that walks past, they're going for meetings, they're doing this, Facebook are there's all these things. Everybody's smiling the moment, a little train of, kids holding hands comes down the road with teacher desperately trying to figure out how to feed them all together. It's
don't let them fall into the canal.
All of those little things. Actually, it does. I'll just throw this in because it's a layer in how you make a great place. It's like sound.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the sound of those children changes how you feel about King's Cross.
So you can hear children, not cars.
Yeah.
And a few canal boats.
And
trains.
But the whole sound thing, when you go to Grosvenor Square, everybody goes, "Oh, it looks amazing," and da-da-da, but sound.
Yeah.
The sound. I sat in boardrooms for years, and as I sat there next to Grosvenor Square, as in a summer's afternoon, you would hear all the screaming of the children running in and out of things, and everybody would be sitting with a smile on their face because they didn't have to see it.
Yeah.
They knew what was happening outside.
Yeah.
We all knew what was going on a sunny summer's afternoon in the fountains.
Yeah.
And you hear it, you could picture it, and it has a really a significant effect on how what it really, finally, where it comes down to, it actually has a positive impact on societal mental health. I know that's a grand statement.
But I can see that.
But it does.
But I think it's also that going back to...
It's why people want to hang out in places like that.
Yeah, it's back to being human. It's bringing you back to, like, nature in a way. It's like your sort of human self rather than just being... I think a lot of sort of... Historically, we've sort of designed our cities for just the economy, like moving people around as fast as possible and building things as cheap as possible.
That's a really, really good point, actually, because, when we... even with King's Cross and with all these, you do these analysis of how people are going to move.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, well, they're going to take that route and they're taking that route. How about doing an analysis of where people are going to stop?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because that's actually the magic.
Yeah.
Where is it that people will stop and gather?
Yeah.
And sit next to a stranger?
Yeah, and have a chat.
And be completely comfortable with that experience.
Yeah.
Because that's what's magic. And when we go to European cities, we see that a lot.
Yeah.
The climate is partly to do with that. But trying to maximise that opportunity here on the days that the sun does shine, putting seats in places where the sun actually can hit you at certain times of the day, it's like all those little things that make it good. But yeah, an analysis of where people will stop and dwell and interact and do all those things
is space as well, because I think the sort of plan, you've got sort of tight spaces, wider spaces, and that sort of differential sort of street textures and widths, and also you've got the canal, which obviously adds an extra sort of element of other people coming by.
King's Cross was blessed with a lot of raw material that was great to work with. And people, I remember somebody saying to me, when we started doing Brent Cross, they sort of said, well, you haven't got any big stations, canals or heritage buildings now. What are you going to do with this?
You've still got people, though.
You
still have people.
And so, when I went to Brent Cross and I looked at it and I kind of like, okay, so you're right, we haven't got any of those things. Well, what have we got? And you search for the uniqueness of that place. And up there, it was 50 acres of playing fields, right in the heart of the development. Okay. We had the opportunity to bring new facilities and amenities onto that space, still as public open space, but to actually now really, really activate it. And the other thing that I had, the first time I went up one of the buildings, I realised from third story, you had unbelievable views. You can see for miles in every direction. You can see back across the skyline of London. You can see out, across the north. You can see across to Hampstead Heath. I mean, you can see Wembley. It's incredible. Yeah. So I always said, those are the two things we've got. That are really, yes, we've got a nice fast train now back into King's Cross and central London. That's great. But we've got this. These are the uniquenesses. So how do we maximise the opportunity for people to benefit from those things?
So I think that sounds magic. So you seem to be quite optimistic. Obviously, we've got a lot of challenges with development, the industry, climate change, but you seem quite optimistic. Are you optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I am.
What brings you the most hope?
Probably my own bias for positivity, I think, is like, there's an element of me is just like, what's the point of being pessimistic? It's like, it's not really going to get you anywhere, is it? I probably have an overtly optimistic bias, which I sometimes get criticised for, but hey, I think actually we need more of that.
Yeah.
I think we need more enthusiasm.
Can do.
And it leads to political will, and it leads to people going out and selling a vision that they might not 100% know how they're going to deliver, but let's just get everybody moving in that direction. And bloody hell, we can figure it out. Come on.
Yeah.
So I do feel optimistic because there is a dialogue for all the challenges and the things that are in the way. I see and I hear a dialogue that crosses the boundaries, that is all moving towards something that looks and feels and sounds good. It sounds like a place where we want to enter. I think the New Towns initiative is a really good thing. To bring this back, to architects as well. I think architects have a massive role to play in all this. Architects bring a set of skills that are completely unique.
This is true.
To architects. Nobody else brings all these things together.
Master of everything.
Nobody else brings that sort of four dimensionality, time being into this at a kind of this grand external scale, and is able to think in the way that they think that they've been trained to think. I think that for me, architects need to be getting back to the centre of this debate and informing this debate. I feel over the last 30 or 40 years, architects as a profession have given up quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
There are a handful of the grandees of our industry who get to, advise and sometimes frankly be wheeled out by politicians and other important people.
They're a little bit famous.
Because they're a bit famous and it makes other people look good.
Yeah.
But I think, and I think architects have slightly, as a profession, have given up their role as an expansive advisor on the whole breadth of how development can successfully take place.
Yeah. I think I can agree with that. I think we need to be better at making wider society, politicians, everybody understand what we actually do and what the value is that we can bring to things.
So one of the first things you've got is
buildings don't have any architects involved, which is a shame.
I mean, I think architects, and I say this, carefully, but I think they need to change some of the language as well.
Yes. Yeah.
I think some of the language that's used by architects actually builds barriers rather than breaks them down.
Yeah.
It's very highbrow, and it I'm afraid it plays to a cliche that turns people off.
Yeah. And they think that we're just going to cost them loads of money.
Going to cost people a load of money, make things complicated. I was asked a question a little while ago. I was at a dinner where actually a number of current at the time and ex-presidents of the RIBA were present, and we were talking about this relationship between architects and clients. And I said, in my last 25 years sitting client side, when we've had challenges and various things, I have never had an architect come to me and say, can you explain to me that financial analysis that's taken place behind the scenes that is creating you challenges so that I can actually understand it and work out how I might be able to do something that would beneficially influence what it's saying. What normally happens is we say that's too expensive, that's not efficient enough, and somebody goes away and tries to make it less expensive and more of it, and there's another one, until eventually we kind of go, okay, that one will do.
Yeah. Maybe we need to be more collaborative.
But it's curiosity.
Yeah.
It's like, why doesn't somebody come and say, I just want to understand what it is that you're looking at that is making this so difficult. What am I doing that's making your job so hard?
Yeah.
and can I understand it so that I can go back and explain that to people? And some of these things aren't that complex. And it's not that that would necessarily unlock it, but nobody has ever been curious enough to come and ask that question.
That's quite astonishing.
Nobody. I've never had that question asked of me.
Wow. So the sort of optimistic, but architects need to put ourselves.
I'm optimistic because I think architects have got a massive role to play in this, along with a lot of other people. If they can just get a position back into this process, where they can actually bring all of their experience and skill to bear on it. And at the moment, I just don't feel, particularly for politicians, when they're putting together expert panels and things, I don't think they naturally think I must get an architect on that panel.
I'm trying to do. I'm like, hello, you need to.
I don't think they naturally do that. I think there's economists and urbanists. And one can debate what
they always go to RACS,
what that is,
rather than the RBA. Yeah.
So how do we get that creative thinking? Because there's a lot of creativity that is required to unlock this.
Yeah.
It is not just a kind of urbane statistical analysis.
So
it requires creativity.
You need that creativity to go from just numbers to places.
Totally.
Yeah. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.